Hello, today we'll be doing a deep dive into unarmed combat. Looking at the skills in the physical group, you can see that the developers have gone out of their way to try and make it a viable combat style. We'll start by looking at how the fist fighting mechanics work and what the most effective tactics are. Then we'll cover which skills you should be focusing on to get the biggest bang for your buck. There's two types of punches, normal punches and power punches. Power punches can only hit once, and normal punches can be combined for up to 3 hits. Afterwards, there's an enforced pause, so button mashing is a bad idea. Blocks also take a second or two to set up. Overall, it's better to watch the enemy and time your attacks. For a long while, you'll probably be looking to meet the requirements to upgrade a related skill, so you'll be favoring a particular type of attack. For example, upgrading the martial arts skill requires you to disarm enemies, in which case you'll be doing as many power attacks as possible. But if you're just looking for the most effective way to punch enemies, there's a couple of approaches you can try. I recommend against doing a 3-punch combination. It's not bad, but it's not the best approach. Only do this if you're very short on oxygen. If you have stamina, it's a good idea to combine normal and power punches, especially once you level up skills to get special abilities like stunning enemies. In my experience, a normal punch followed by a power punch is a great combination. It allows you to hit hard, but the timing also works well with enemy attacks. You'll often find that blocking after a power attack tends to catch enemy attacks. This combination is almost as fast as doing a single power attack, because power attacks force you to pause after you use them. 2 normal punches plus a power punch if you think you can get away with it. But the timing to block a counter can be tricky, because enemies will often get a hit in before you can raise your block. Aim for the head by putting the reticle over it when you punch. Headshots are more effective. It will take you some time to get used to the punching mechanics, but the most important things to keep in mind are that there's a pause after some punches, and blocking takes some time. It's also a good idea to use third person at least occasionally to see what's going on around you, especially if there's more than one enemy. By the way, if you haven't already, please leave a like if you're finding this video helpful. And subscribe because I'll be uploading more guides to help you enjoy Starfield. Thank you to those who've already done that. Next we'll cover the skills.
Is that all?
If you're starting a new character focused on fist fighting, I'd recommend going for the bouncer background. You get boxing and fitness as starting skills, which directly make you better at unarmed combat. Plus the security skill, which is great to get as soon as possible regardless of your build. Another decent one is gangster, but it only gives you boxing. Other useful profiles are ones that give you stealth. Traits aren't particularly useful for unarmed combat, but wanted does give you a bit of a damage boost when you're at low health. The good thing is that most of the skills that you want for unarmed combat are in the physical group. That means that you'll reach the more advanced skills faster, which is where punching really becomes powerful. As you might have guessed, boxing is a critical skill to get. It makes your punches more damaging and gives you a chance to knock down enemies at level 4. The next key skill is martial arts. It gives you more criticals and the chance to disarm enemies with power attacks, plus an inherent 10% damage reduction and a chance to reflect damage on a successful block. In the 4th tier, Neuro Strikes further enhances your ability to take enemies out of the fight by stunning them and doing EM damage. With the final level, you can knock down enemies nearby too. But even after fully upgrading boxing, you'll still need to fully upgrade another skill in the physical group to reach martial arts. I recommend stealth, because taking down enemies one at a time is pretty useful, especially early on when you're not very powerful. It's also a good general skill to have, and will still be very useful even when you're using weapons, and it has amazing synergies with concealment. Fitness is another good candidate if you want a more in-your-face approach. More oxygen means you can do more power attacks and sprint between enemies. Gymnastics is also useful for moving between enemies. The downside of both fitness and gymnastics is that when you start using weapons, they're not as beneficial because you're not going to be running between enemies as much. Pain tolerance and energy weapon dissipation are also decent second skills. Damage resistance is never bad. But I'd recommend getting boxing and stealth from the 1st tier. That will open up martial arts. You should be at around level 8 when you first get it. And once you fully upgraded that one, you should have access to Neuro Strikes and concealment. Neurostrikes is the priority if you think you want to focus on knocking out enemies. It's easily the best method of stunning enemies, because the EM damage and the chance to stun apply regardless of how much health the enemy has. You can easily stun lock powerful enemies. But concealment is just as good. It's actually better if you prefer stealth, because a 10 times sneak attack bonus is amazing, and the skill still works just as well if you switch to guns. Just get a good silenced weapon and you'll be playing the stealth archer style from Skyrim. You should be level 16 by the time you fully upgrade either skill, or level 20 if you upgrade both. There's two major approaches, as you might have guessed from the previous section. One is to focus on stealth punching, and the other is to go in your face. Early on it's better to focus on stealth, because you're pretty weak and taking on groups of enemies is going to be tough and frustrating. Basically this means sneaking around and going for sneak attacks on individual enemies. Ideally you'll be able to take them out without alerting the entire group. If you do get discovered, then one approach is to retreat and wait until they stop being alarmed. Then go back in for more stealth kills. Keep in mind that there's times when enemies are placed in such a way that you literally can't sneak attack them. So don't expect to be able to take out all enemies quietly. That's when you'll have to go full action style. This approach is a bit more challenging. The ideal is to sprint between enemies and cover. The last thing you want is to be caught in a crossfire. You'll go down pretty quickly, even if you're spamming healing. So maneuver to keep as much cover between you and the rest of the enemy group as possible. You'll have to keep a close eye on your oxygen, because in the frenzy of combat, you're likely to use it all up and end up taking damage from the build-up of CO2. Focus on taking down or disarming one enemy at a time. Make sure you pick up the weapons they drop, and they'll have to resort to fist fighting you. As you upgrade your martial arts and neurostrike skills, you'll be disarming and knocking out enemies pretty quickly. That's when fist fighting really shows its power. Unarmed combat does not allow you to take advantage of cover, so it's important to focus on getting the best suits possible. Ideally suits with damage reduction from humans or ranged attacks, because many of the goals you need to meet to upgrade skills can only be done against human enemies. Always keep a lot of healing items on hand, because you'll be taking more damage than if you're using guns. Buy all the healing and trauma kits from every vendor and sell them the loot you take from enemies to fund the purchases. But don't neglect damage resistance, especially in the early game. Many alcoholic drinks give you damage resistance for a few minutes at the cost of losing oxygen regeneration, but you can counter some of that by also consuming oxygen boosting foods like sparkling water. Getting a free plus 50 or plus 100 damage resistance from a quick beer can easily double your resistance in the early game. You can find these pretty much everywhere, so always make sure you're drinking something before fighting groups of enemies. And of course there's drugs that you can take to give you damage resistance and extra oxygen for groups that are particularly tough. You'll find Heart Plus drugs pretty often. They give you 200 more damage resistance and a bit more oxygen, both of which are very useful for fist fighting. Battle Stims and Cobex help you with resisting and doing more damage. Once you find the recipe for it, you can mix the two into Red Trench for an even larger boost to melee damage and damage resistance. Frostwolf will help you be stealthier, so you can get the sneak attacks you need to upgrade your sneak and concealment skills. Early on they're lifesavers, so always be buffing before fights. But keep in mind that you can't stack bonuses of the same type. So it's either alcohol or chems for damage resistance, not both. Once you get access to powers, Personal Atmosphere is a good fit for this style if you're over encumbered, which, let's face it, is going to happen often. It refills your oxygen meter and gives you unlimited oxygen for a little while. It's great for when you need to sprint to the next enemy. Equally good is the Reflective Shield power. You'll be running up to enemies and they'll get clear shots at you, so reducing how much damage you take is very helpful. The anti-gravity field is good for disabling groups of enemies for a little while. The cost is pretty high though, and as you get skill bonuses, you'll be naturally knocking down and stunning enemies anyway, but it's good early on to get the upper hand on a group of enemies. Personally, I rely on the shield and atmosphere powers the most. Overall, unarmed combat is most enjoyable after you max out boxing and get a few levels of martial arts. Before that, you'll need to be more careful, but once you start knocking down and disarming enemies, you'll begin to see what unarmed combat can truly do. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments. Feel free to leave a like, subscribe and hit the bell button to be notified when new videos come out. See you soon.